Hello, my name is Caden, and today's video I'm gonna try to diagnose and figure out why this car starts very rough, and hopefully I'll help you guys out too. Basically my symptoms are the car has a very hard time starting, especially after it has sat for a while, and you have to either put your foot to the floor on the accelerator or pump the gas, and it starts really rough, and it'll run really rough and stall out a bunch of times, or it'll stay running but it'll act like an old carbed engine where it's choked and it kind of just lopes a little bit, but then it smooths out after like a few seconds, and then it runs perfectly fine the whole time the vehicle's on. So what I'm going to look into and test and potentially replace is the fuel pressure regulator, because obviously the fuel pump works. If it doesn't, if it runs, the fuel pump obviously works, and it smooths out and it runs perfectly fine. That tells me the ignition is okay, the timing I know is okay. Fuel injectors are okay because it smooths out and it runs perfectly fine. It's just starting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this Harbor Freight fuel pressure gauge, and we're going to screw it onto the top. Now, I haven't started the car up today, so it has just sat overnight. So I'm going to put this on here just to see if we have any pressure at all. And what do you know? We don't even have fuel pressure at the rail, which tells me that's probably bad. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to try to start it up, and I'm going to watch this and see if it does anything crazy. Alright, so now that we have it running, let's check this out. We're at about 35 psi. I mean, that's a little on the lower side, but it's alright. It's obviously enough to keep it running, but you heard how it cranked extra. It shouldn't crank extra. It should just start with the flick of a key. My Bonneville always did for years, and so this one does it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test the bleed down. So I'm going to shut the vehicle off, try to prop this up here, and we're going to see if it holds pressure at the rail. Now that we want it to hold pressure at the rail, so if it drops to 0, we know we have a bad fuel pressure regulator. So let's try it out. So it looks like we are still holding some pressure, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna wait a couple minutes, maybe just like 2 or 3, and it shouldn't drop. It should actually hold pressure at the rail for quite some time, but it looks like we're slowly actually starting to drop. So I'm gonna wait a little bit, and I'm going to see how far this actually drops, because it should hold pressure for a while, and that's what causes it to start with the flick of the key, because you've already got fuel up here at the rail that's pressurized. It just needs to be sent into the injectors when they pulse. But if your rail is not primed like it wasn't, then more than likely your fuel pressure regulator is bad. And I can already see that it's dropping, and it's dropping relatively quick. which tells me that there's probably a small leak inside this fuel pressure regulator. So I'm gonna change it out, is what I'm gonna do. I figured this is enough to go off of, to where, yeah, see, it's already past 30, to where I believe this is my issue with the starting. So they're pretty straightforward to change. I do recommend, well, if yours doesn't already bleed itself down, to bleed it out. It has a cool little bleeder here. You push this button, it'll kind of just dispense fuel out the line, and you can put it on concrete or whatever, let it evaporate. So there's a small vacuum line that unhooks. This unscrews. I recommend using a line wrench for that. These are 10 millimeter. It's not a nut, it's just a bolt. And you got to undo 2 of them. Now the other one's a little hard to get to, but it's not impossible. And then this will pull out of the rail, and it has an O-ring on it. And I'll show you what another one looks like. So this is another fuel pressure regulator. This one came off my Pontiac Bonneville, so I know it works, because everything freaking worked on that thing before it died. So there's the little O-ring. O-ring seems to be in pretty good shape. I'll probably just put a little bit of lube on it and force it in. This is a Bosch brand. Camera's having trouble focus. Made in Germany. I don't know if that's OEM or not, but this is what it looks like. You get it how it presses into the rail. You get the side that the fuel rail screws into, and vacuum line, and that's all there is to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace that. It's just gonna be a little tough to get to the underneath one, because when I pulled this off, I had the whole I had this whole rail taken off, but I don't want to take the whole rail off on this. I just want to swap this fuel pressure regulator out. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do, and I'll show you guys the result. Something else to note: if you get fuel that comes out of this vacuum line when you pull it off, that is shot. That fuel pressure regulator is shot. Should not be raw fuel coming out of this line and going into the intake. If it fails bad enough, that could cause backfires in the intake, and on a Series 2, that's a bad thing, because it'll literally blow the whole intake up. And this one, it's just same possibility, but yeah, anyway, we don't want that to happen. So if you get that, after you shut it off, replace this fuel pressure regulator. And so far, that's what I'm working on. It's just this other bolt behind it's going to be a little tough to get to, but I'm going to move this vacuum line off, and we're gonna figure it out. So I did end up removing the bolt for this too, and removing the vacuum line here. And I also you know, this one, they're together. Unplugged a couple things, got this so I could move this down. This was all just to get to this bolt in the back, and I had to, yeah, get it down just enough to get it. But this is actually the new one installed. I'm just waiting on this to kind of evaporate a bunch of the fuel that was inside of the lines, and I'm gonna give time, because a lot of fuel will come out of the rail when you undo this, so you got to quickly throw the other one on or plug it up somehow. But fuel spilled all over, so I got to let it evaporate, throw this back on, and it should just start up after it gets primed correctly. Alright, so our fuel pressure regulator is fully installed all the way. I hooked the fuel gauge on the pressure gauge up to it again already, and I've left it for about 10 minutes. And so far it has held roughly between 30 and 35 this whole entire time. So that tells me it's working at least better than the other one. You will have, of course, pressure bleed down very slowly over time, but that other one, it had dropped about 10 psi within like a minute or even less. This one I've had for 10 minutes and it hasn't even dropped below 30. So we'll see if it starts with the flick of a key now, or if it just starts easy. I've primed it a couple times, so you'll just want to, when you get it installed, just like turn the key on and off a few times. You'll want to hear your fuel pump hum, of course. So we're gonna see what happens. And what do you know? Started right with the flick of a key. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have to call this one fixed. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm glad I figured this out, and I hope this helped some of you guys out too. Until the next video, thanks for watching.